Welcome to Leading by Example, upholding standards without compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Are you ready to be better within your world and become the standard bearer within your organization or wherever you are? Leaders, aspirants, every one of you, all of us influence our culture, the organization's culture, our workplace's culture through actions taken both inside and outside of the workplace. I founded Ontero Solutions upon integrity, customer satisfaction, and attention to detail, specifically executive coaching and leadership development. Join in for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. Leading by example starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of our radio show where we explore the real issues that challenge our standards, inspire change, and help us lead by example in a world that sometimes forgets what matters. I'm your host, Dr. Vaughn, and I'm thrilled to have you join me as we explore these important topics together. So have you ever wondered why our values are often compromised in our workplaces, politics, or personal lives? Why do we sometimes see principles pushed aside for quick wins or convenience? Leading by example, upholding standards without compromise, tackles these questions. Throughout the series, we'll dig deep into the tough issues, offering insights, answers, and most importantly, solutions. So are you ready to explore how we can all lead by example? I hope so, because we're about to get started. So today we are launching a new series titled The Voice of Virtue, Communicating Ethics in a Cynical World. This two-part series provides leaders with the tools and insights necessary to effectively convey ethical standards and virtues, inspiring teams and organizations to adopt these principles despite the challenges of modern cynicism. So this episode is titled Establishing Credibility in Ethical Communication. And it centers on a crucial skill every leader must cultivate, and that is establishing and maintaining credibility when discussing ethics and integrity. It's not merely about saying the right things, it's about building trust, remaining authentic, and bridging the gap with audiences who may, come from a place of skepticism. So with that said, let's dive right into the first part of our discussion, which is building trust in ethical communication. So building trust is the foundation of ethical leadership. Without trust, even the most sincere messages can fall flat or worse, breed further skepticism. Trust becomes especially crucial when discussing ethics, as these conversations often delve into deeply personal values, emotions, and principles. So let's explore the strategies for building trust in more detail and look at some real-world examples to highlight their impact. So the first strategy is active listening. If you look at or listen to some of the previous shows, active listening has been, one of the recurring, consistent themes. So trust begins with the ability to listen. Active listening goes beyond merely hearing words. It involves understanding the audience's concerns, their values, and their emotions. And leaders who practice active listening create an environment where individuals feel valued and understood. And this is essential for building trust. So, here are some practical tips for, active listening. The first thing that you could do is solicit feedback. That's done through soliciting or encouraging open dialogue, asking your audience for input on ethical policies or decisions. Ask their opinions on some things. Reflect back. Paraphrase some key points that you mentioned, and get them to kind of share what they're thinking, and then you in turn demonstrate that you have listened to and that you grasp their concerns. And then, the last little approach is, adapt your response, tailor your message to address the specific concerns that your audience shared with you. That shows that you were actively listening. As an example, Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, my apologies if I butchered that, but I did my best. He provided an example of active listening in action when addressing concerns about ethical AI development. Y'all know that's a hot one. Nadella prioritized listening to employees, customers, and external stakeholders. He implemented an open forum where people could voice their concerns about potential biases and risks in AI systems. This approach demonstrated respect and informed the company's AI ethical guidelines, which now serve as a tech industry benchmark. So, he set a new standard, a great positive new standard. In addition to active listening, another strategy is consistency. Consistency between the leader's words and actions builds reliability. And that's just not within leadership. We all know, in your, interpersonal relationships as well, right? So ethical communication is not just about delivering compelling messages, something that moves the masses. It's about demonstrating through action that those messages reflect genuine values. And some approaches to consistency is, like we do here on this show, or we try to do, is lead by example. Ensure that you yourself as the leader and your subordinate leaders adhere to ethical standards that they promote. So do what you say you're going to do, or what you're preaching, right? Practice what you're preaching. um, Institutionalize those ethics within the organization. So integrate those ethical principles into company policies, practices, and decision making processes. Don't just have, oh, these are our ethics, our ethical principles, and then they don't get, integrated or baked into, the organization's operations. Is useless if you don't. And then, the last approach to consistency is follow through. Clearly demonstrate efforts to implement those values and commitments established during those ethical discussions. So, follow up with doing. And as an example, Patagonia, which is an outdoor apparel company, they exemplified consistency in ethical communication. They committed to environmental ethics in their, which was apparent in their business practices, such as donating 1% of their sales to environmental causes and implementing sustainable manufacturing processes. And so this alignment between words and actions help establish Patagonia as a trusted and ethical brand. And those of you who may know a little bit about Patagonia, there were some issues about, the how they were making, their garments. So that caused a big stir, but they got ahead of it and addressed it. The next strategy is transparency. So transparency involves openness and honesty, even in difficult situations. Ethical leaders who embrace transparency, they build credibility by showing that they have nothing to hide and are prepared to engage with their audience openly. I know, sometimes that can be difficult because some people don't like to feel exposed or vulnerable, but it is so essential, so essential to leadership. And again, that trust. And some practical approaches, are to, explain the decision making process. Some people, I've experienced this, as a follower. Some people don't like to be transparent about how they arrived at the decision that, you're forced, you're expected to abide by. I won't say forced, but that you're expected to abide by. Um, so again, explain the decision making process, because when you share the reasoning and the values behind the key decisions, you tend to get buy-in. People understand it. They may not agree, but they understand it. Another approach is to recognize the challenges. So, be honest about the difficulties and the trade-offs involved in making those ethical decisions. They're not easy, but be open about the challenges you as the leader had in making those. And people understand, and appreciate. At least I've seen, they understand and they appreciate that human side, that vulnerability, that you share. Nobody expects you to be, rock hard, get it right all the time, have all the answers. I know some of the leaders that I respected the most were those that were most relatable or human. And then the next approach is to provide updates. So, keep your organization informed about the progress towards those ethical initiatives, even if the results take time. But, don't just, wish it away. Don't say nothing about it. Like, oh, don't say nothing. I ain't gonna say nothing. That's not a good strategy. Provide updates. And as a good example, this is the example that I've found for this is Denmark's transparency with the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. As you all remember, when back in 2020, 2021, when COVID and the vaccines were really really huge as far as like prioritizing who was going to get the vaccines. This was a big deal. So during the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, Denmark demonstrated transparency by clearly communicating their reasoning behind how they were going to prioritize. So the government consistently provided detailed information about who would receive the vaccine first and why, including, they provided some data. for their decisions that were, and the data was based on age, vulnerability, and occupation. And we saw that as well in the United States. And then additionally, when the AstraZeneca vaccine was suspended due to safety concerns, the Danish health officials, they promptly, quickly informed the public about the situation. They provided scientific data on potential risks, clarified that the suspension was a precautionary measure, and emphasized their commitment to public safety. So once the vaccine was reintroduced, with modifications, of course, the Danish government communicated openly about their decision-making progress. So again, this proactive transparency helped maintain public trust and the vaccination program, which was super, super critical, during that time. And even now, not just with COVID vaccines, but, other vaccines and, government, mandates or, policies that, we have to conform to or live with. So, by engaging citizens as partners in their decision-making process, and not just governments, but, organizations, when you engage, the employees as partners in the decision-making process, you build trust in the leadership and in that, overall system. The next strategy is to build relational trust. So ethical communication is about cultivating relationships rather than just delivering a message. And, I've observed, and I'm sure you have as well, where, sometimes it can be forgotten that relationship is the huge part of leadership. It's not about your position, because if you have a leader that relies solely on a position, then instantly you render yourself ineffective. So again, ethical communication is about cultivating the relationship rather than just delivering the message. And leaders build relational trust by demonstrating care, respect, and commitment to the organization's well-being. And some things that leaders can do to build relational trust is to, be present, demonstrate a genuine interest in the employees' concerns by engaging with them directly. I know, sometimes I think most leaders tend to be introverts. I am one, but I happen to like people, so it's weird. I have this little weird little mix going on. But I'm an introvert, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I want to give you a hug and I want to talk, but it's weird. But anyway, as leaders, you want to engage, be present with the people within your organization and engage them directly. That goes a long way by showing that genuine interest. How are you? Genuinely mean it. Don't just how are you, and then when they start talking, sharing with you about something they're dealing with, you just take off, or you give the deer in the headlights look. Be present. That's so, so, so vital and goes such a long way. The next strategy, or the next approach for the building relational trust strategy, is to empathize. We talked a lot about empathy in our previous episode. You want to acknowledge those emotions and perspectives, even when they differ from your own. And then, the last approach, you want to encourage collaboration. Collaboration is so, so huge. You want to partner with, your organizational members to establish common ethical goals. You don't want to make these goals in a silo. You want to bring them in. We all know that, projects and, programs that were, created with a diverse team tend to do or fare better. The same is true with ethical goals. Bring them people together. And as an example for this strategy of building relational trust, the Starbucks CEO, Kevin Johnson, his response to a racial bias incident in 2018 serves as our compelling example for this strategy. So after two Black men were arrested at a Starbucks store for waiting without making a purchase, Johnson issued an apology. He met with the individuals involved and introduced a company-wide racial bias training program. His empathetic and proactive approach helped rebuild trust and demonstrated a commitment to fostering a more inclusive culture. So, I'm sure a lot of you remember this incident. I particularly do. And there was so much more to it, but, kudos to, Kevin Johnson for what he did. The next strategy is to leverage institutional trust. So leaders can build trust by aligning with trusted institutions, get those partnerships. or they can partner with widely recognized ethical frameworks, right? So this approach ensures that, the audience or the organization that you're targeting or you're focusing those ethical goals towards, um, you know, that those established principles, back your stance as a leader. It's like you calling in reinforcements. Like, not only do I believe this, but these, valued or respected organizations and frameworks believe the same thing I do. It's like instant credibility, right? So, here are some approaches to leveraging institutional trust. You want to cite those trusted resources. So, provide those references to those accepted ethical standards. Um, you want to, again, partner with credible organizations. You can collaborate with non-governmental organizations, or ethical watchdogs or advocacy groups. And then you can also commit to external audits, which is I think that's probably the biggest one. An external audit by a third party. Just, hey, come on in. Check us out and see where we stand. See, measure us against what we said we were going to do. That's huge. So you can use those third party assessments to verify those ethical practices. Just think about how far that goes with your employees when they see that you as a leader are peeling down the banana, peeling the skin to be exposed and invite an external party in to check on you. And an example of this example is Tesla and the carbon emissions credit program. So Tesla does a lot of things, but Tesla has effectively harnessed institutional trust by aligning its business model with globally recognized environmental policies and frameworks such as carbon emissions credit programs. These programs, established by governments and environmental organizations, reward companies that produce low or zero emission vehicles, allowing them to sell surplus credits to other automakers that exceed emissions limits. Good strategy, right? Suppose. But by engaging in these programs and publicly emphasizing its leadership role in sustainability, Tesla enhances its credibility as an environmentally conscious company. And additionally, Tesla's ongoing references to compliance with international environmental standards and its public reporting on emissions reductions further strengthen that institutional trust. I really like that. I don't have a Tesla, but I like to say I've become very much more environmentally conscious over the past few years. Probably like the last 10 years, I should say, not few, last 10 years. But this alignment, Tesla's alignment with globally trusted frameworks assured their stakeholders, their customers, investors, and regulators that their commitment to sustainability was not just a marketing strategy or just talk, but it was an aspect of how they do business. And it was validated by third party institutions. So phenomenal, phenomenal example here. At least I say so myself because I found it. Another example I want to share with you is Nestle and the roundtable on sustainable palm oil. I thought this was very interesting. So Nestle, a global food and beverage company, has leveraged institutional trust through its partnership with the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, or the RSPO, to address environmental and ethical concerns related to palm oil production. So palm oil cultivation faces criticism for its role in deforestation, habitat destruction, and human rights violations. In response to these issues, the RSPO, again, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, established rigorous guidelines for sustainable palm oil production. So Nestle committed to sourcing 100% certified sustainable palm oil and has become an active member of the RSPO. Nestle has aligned its efforts with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly those aimed at environmental sustainability and responsible consumption. And by regularly publishing updates on its progress toward achieving sustainable palm oil sourcing, Nestle has ensured transparency and accountability. And then, furthermore, Nestle invited third party audits, again, peeling the banana, being open, to come in and look at their supply chain to verify compliance with RSPO standards. And they made these findings as well public. So these actions enhance credibility by showing that the company was aligned with reputable institutions and held accountable by external authorities. And so, as you can imagine, the impact of Nestle's partnership with RSPO And their commitment to transparency resulted in reduced public skepticism about their sustainability claims. It fostered trust with consumers and stakeholders concerned with environmental ethics. So, to put a bow on this beautiful package of strategies that we just briefly discussed, building trust in ethical communications involves five things: active listening, consistency, transparency, relational trust, and institutional trust. So we're going to move on to part two of this show here. Originally, I was just going to have it just one, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's only like 10 minutes. So kind of just tacking this on because it was another little short show, just kind of combine them all together. So part two, again, same topic, but we're talking about, authenticity in communication and, authenticity as the cornerstone of ethical leadership, right? So, authenticity, I think, is, probably one of those overused words like synergy, but regardless, here goes. Authenticity is the lifeblood of ethical communication. It allows leaders to connect more deeply with their audiences by demonstrating sincerity, transparency, and commitment to shared values. So, in an era of growing skepticism or cynicism, authenticity builds those bridges of trust and helps leaders stand out in a landscape that is, that can be perceived as, insincere. So here's an example of authenticity and communication accompanied by some strategies and real world examples that demonstrate, the effectiveness of these strategies. So what is authenticity in communication? So again, authenticity, as we all know, it means being genuine, being true to one's own values, right? We always say, oh, just be authentically you. Same with leadership, be authentically you. But within the context of leadership, this also involves communicating with honesty and avoiding pretense, right? And as a leader, that can be tough because we always have those things in the back of your mind that are going on, but aren't available for consumption by all, right? So you want to communicate with honesty and avoid pretense. And you want to align words with your actions to reflect into your integrity. And then you want to show vulnerability by acknowledging imperfections or challenges. I'll tell you personally, nothing resonates with me more than a leader who says, hey, we have these things going on. Um, I appreciate, your support. I may not get it all right. I'm just like, wow, I love that. It makes me want to, support even more from my foxhole. I'm like, this person acknowledged, where they sit, that they don't have it all. They don't have all the answers, that they're prone to mistakes. So again, leaders showing vulnerability by acknowledging imperfections or challenges is super duper helpful to building that authenticity and communication. And again, authentic communication, is more than just, conveying a polished message. It means, it transcends to the human aspect of leadership. It makes your message more relatable and persuasive when you tie it into that human side. And it also helps to motivate audiences to engage emotionally and rationally. Like I mentioned, when I hear a leader that, is vulnerable and shares, hey, we got a lot of stuff coming up. I may not get it all right. Be patient with me. It may be tough. I'm like, yes, I got you. I got you. Okay. So, again, so moving forward with our communications, what are some essential components of authentic communications? Personalization. So, authenticity often starts with making communication personal. We talked about this, right? Sharing personal stories, values, or motivations. These help to transform abstract principles into relatable narratives for people to embody and just kind of marinate on. And again, they get to know you better. And as a good example, I'm going to use I've already butchered your name, Mulally, and Ford's turnaround story. So when Alan Mulally became CEO of Ford Motor Company in 2006, the company was facing some significant financial challenges. His personal approach to communication helped him to inspire trust and just rally the organization around a shared vision for recovery. So instead of giving generic speeches about efficiencies and cost cutting, those, right? Mulally candidly shared his personal philosophy of working together. And that's huge when you have a top leader, telling you, hey, let's work together to turn this ship around. He stressed his belief in teamwork and transparency. He connected these values to his experiences leading complex teams at other organizations such as Boeing. He also shared personal anecdotes, his personal stories about his family and his upbringing, showing the values that he wanted Ford to adopt because he believed in those values. And those values were integrity, collaboration, and resilience. Who won't stand by that, right? A crucial moment of personalization occurred when, Mulally introduced his well-known red, yellow, green system for tracking progress. And I really like red, yellow, green, or in the military, we say red, amber, green, for tracking progress. He took the lead in meetings where team members openly discussed the status of their projects. And if someone, reported something as red, which signified a critical issue for Ford, he didn't respond with frustration like, how dare you, but he encouraged them, asking, how can we help? And that's what a leader does, right? And for those of you out there who are, project managers, you probably can relate to this as well. How can I help you? What resources or what obstacles are in your way? What resources can I provide to help you, get over this hurdle? Again, but Alan Mulally, his personalized, empathetic approach cultivated an environment of openness and accountability. Right? I think everybody can appreciate that. Sometimes people get scared to report the red, but it's best to tell the truth, right? Bad news don't get better with time. And I think leaders like Mulally can appreciate the fact that not all stories are good news stories, right? There's always room for improvement. So sometimes those stories fall within your portfolio, right? It's scary when it's on you to share this little red status with your leadership, but that's how we get better. And again, consistency, right? Another recurring theme. Authenticity requires consistency, not only in our communications, but also in our behaviors. And authentic leaders' words should also align with their actions, they should match. And a disconnect can result in accusations of hypocrisy, and serve to damage that trust. And I'm sure we've seen examples of that as well, right? So don't let that be you, because here we strive to lead by example. Another strategy is vulnerability. We talk about that. Recognize your mistakes, or uncertainties, because this helps audiences understand that again, you are human. It brings that human element, to the organization. This vulnerability, it also helps nurture empathy, from them towards you. And it shows that you have a readiness to learn and grow. We're not exempt, right? So although, leaders tend to be on the blame line, you still want to be, relatable. And again, this helps, foster all those great things that we as leaders are looking for, looking to foster and build within our organizations. And then the last one is empathy, right? Authentic communication involves putting oneself in the audience's shoes. Again, like I said, we talked a lot about empathy in our previous show, but understanding, the organizational members, their concerns, their fears and aspirations, it helps leaders, develop and create messages that resonate with the organizational members on a more personal level. And this can take some digging, right? You really need to like step outside yourself, because I know for me sometimes you get caught up in the momentum of things and getting stuff done, and you're not necessarily thinking to the level that you need to, granularly about how an action is going to impact other people, because it doesn't necessarily pertain to you. You're just like, oh, okay, it's just going to be what it's going to be. No, think about how it's going to, impact others, and shift your message accordingly. You know, Empathy is more than just that word. It requires some, really heart to heart talking with yourself. Don't just blaze past it. Sit there and marinate on that thing. Even if you need to, do some research of, other organizations that may have had similar challenges. Or, you may have, I know most leaders do have, those trusted agents within their formations, if you will, or within their organizations that they can, like, hey, what do you think about this? How do you think that would go over? That even works, right? So, get that feedback, before you create your message, because you don't want to just, take a business as usual approach to it. You really want to, create a message that resonates with, your organizational members. And you create that resonating message by making sure that it speaks to them. So, here are some practical strategies for authentic communication. Share your why. And this again will, require you to be vulnerable, but, explain, your values and motivations behind the decisions that you made. This helps the audience understand, not just what you stand for, but why you stand for it, right? And even if they don't, agree, who can't get behind you and support you on that? Just like Alamo Mulali, sharing personal stories or experiences also help, make your values come alive because people, they can pin that on you, be like, oh, I already know. I already know, you know, this is, how we're going with this because this is what this person stands for. So we want to kind of like, it's your brand. That's really what it is, your brand. And as leaders, we should all have a brand. Branding is not just a marketing thing, but I don't want to digress too far. The second strategy is, be transparent about the challenges. Again, you want to acknowledge when something is challenging or flawed. You like, hey, the system is broken, but we're gonna do the best we can. And you want to confront those difficulties head on. You don't want to skirt around it and act like it doesn't exist. And you want to demonstrate your integrity and ensure that you continue to encourage that spirit of collaboration throughout those difficult times. You want to also speak plainly. This is another strategy. Speak plainly. Lose the jargon. Lose the big words. No need for what you call like the $20 words, or maybe that's not a good example. Anyway, use basic language. Okay, steer clear of the jargon and any complicated language. Tell people straight up. Don't beat around the bush. Just tell them straight up. Genuine communication is simple and clear, and people respect that more when they can, take what you say and like, okay, I got it. Versus all of this, talking around the bush and big words where people got to go back and, research it and then try to understand how does that apply to what was going on. You want to use words that make sure that everybody, can understand your message. And again, getting back to our empathy, you want to make sure that message again is tailored to the needs and emotions of, your organizational members. And use inclusive language that demonstrates that you value, their perspectives. So when I say inclusive language, I'm talking about, of course, organizations are diverse. Hopefully they are. But some terms or whatever have different meanings in various cultures. So you want to make sure that you kind of, smooth that over before you, give, your messaging because you don't want anything lost. You also want to, the last one is you also want to align your words with your actions, live up to those ethical standards that you promote. So, again, people quickly, they can quickly spot an inconsistency. So make sure as a leader, because you are, whether you know it or not, you are under a magnifying glass. So make sure that your behavior always reflects the principles that you espouse. So the impact of authenticity is huge. Authentic communication, again, it serves to build trust, encourage engagement. You want that. You really, really want that. And it also serves to inspire action. So when leaders communicate authentically, their words resonate with their, organizational members more deeply and motivates them to embrace the ethical behavior because, they want to be like you. Y'all remember, I want to be like Mike, whatever your name is, you want your organizational members to be saying, oh, I want to be like, I want to be like Javon. I want to be like, Kimberly. I want to be like Thomas, Yes, be that example that they want to embody. I think there's no greater compliment than that. So just to recap, authenticity in communication is not just a leadership tool. It's a way of being. Again, it's your brand. And by showing up as your true authentic self and sincerely expressing your values, you create a foundation of trust and connection that elevates ethical leadership to new heights. And so the next part to overcoming skepticism or cynicism is, you want to confront the elephant in the room, right? So, we always there's a skeptic everywhere, right? And it's a natural reaction for many of us, especially, you know, with what we've seen in government and the world. So whenever somebody's talking about ethics, we always like, basically like, what's the saying? I like it. It says, not it don't apply to me, but I like the saying where it says rules for thee, but not for me, right? That's skepticism. Um, so when somebody who has seen that in practice, it causes them to be a skeptic. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we highlight the importance of ethical communications and leadership. So a great example is data privacy violations. The one that was with Facebook, the Cambridge Analytica scandal. I remember this, so this is why I picked it, because it chafed me so bad. But anyway, in 2018, it was revealed that Cambridge Analytica had collected data from millions of Facebook users without their consent to influence political campaigns. This is part of the reasons why I'm not on social media. That and I'm just not good at it. So anyway, Facebook had taken a lot of data from users without their consent to influence the 2016 US presidential campaign, the election. And so the impacts of this was, ultimately Facebook faced a $5 billion fine from the Federal Trade Commission. Of course, there was uproar all over the world over data privacy violations. And then there has been increased regulatory scrutiny on, big tech, to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So, with this particular instance with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, transparency and accountability are critical in the age of data driven business models. Your data is everywhere, right? Ethical communications could have helped mitigate all this fallout and restore trust sooner had they been honest about it beforehand, right? I remember feeling so violated, like, oh my gosh, I'm not even on social media that much, and the little bit I got up there was taken. Oh my goodness. And here's some key statistics on ethical breaches, some research, right? So in 2022, a global business ethics survey, 49% of employees witnessed misconduct in their workplaces, with more than a quarter of those individuals experiencing retaliation after voicing their concerns. Hmm. Data breaches. According to IBM's 2023 cost of a data breach report, the average cost of a data breach globally was $4.45 million. So again, this highlights the financial and reputational damage of ethical lapses in cybersecurity. Don't get me started. That's like my little sweet spot. But anyway, environmental scandals. In 2022, a global sustainability study, 40% of consumers stated that they would boycott a brand following unethical environmental practices. So just think about these things, leaders. If you're a leader in an organization where you're making these ethical decisions, and especially in regards to data protection, data privacy, this is so huge, and the implications is bigger than just your decision, and consulting with your team, and those within your organization. But just think about the reputational damage to your organization at large if you don't get something right, or you violate a rule. And there are tons of rules out there, so make sure you check them all. Make sure that you're in compliance. So with all of that said, how can leaders counteract this skepticism or cynicism? So the first step is to acknowledge it. Okay, we can't pretend that cynicism does not exist, because if we do, that only deepens it. People are like, what you hiding? They become suspicious of you as a leader. Instead, as leaders, we should meet the skepticism head on, tackle it, validate the organization members' concern, and demonstrate that you have empathy for their doubts. Focus on actions, not just the words, because those that are skeptical are more likely to be convinced by what you do versus what you say. So again, that consistency is got to match. It's got to match. And again, you can also, as leaders, we can share real examples of ethical decisions or initiatives that back up the messaging that we have. And ultimately, your track record will speak for itself. So um, lastly, we want to embrace an inclusive dialogue instead of giving a one-sided, spiel. Invite your organizational members to participate in the conversation. Like I mentioned earlier, seek their input, promote their questions, and hold space, create space. That was just my little laugh from the Wicked tour, where they were holding space, but create space for their voices. because when people feel acknowledged, they're more inclined to open their minds and hearts to your message. It's like, giving them buy-in, giving them a piece of the pie. Everybody wants to feel like, they're part of a part of the action, that what they said and or what they do matters within the organization that they spend a significant chunk of their time supporting at on a daily basis. So now that we've explored how leaders can establish and maintain credibility, let's turn to the second part of our episode, which is inspiring ethical practices through communication. So, the language of ethics. Words have meaning, right? We hear that all the time. Or words have power. And they do, because they influence how individuals think, feel, and behave. As leaders, we must be intentional about our words, the words that we choose when we promote ethical behaviors or ethics in general. For example, when we're framing ethical principles in terms of shared values, such as fairness, respect, and integrity, it helps establish common ground with our organizational members. Again, steer clear of the jargon or overly technical terms, because these can create distance and confusion. Like, oh, why they got to use big words? They just, it makes you not feel relatable. You use the words that everybody can understand, and it's probably better for you too as a leader. I mean, if you're anything like me, sometimes I'm just like, give me the simple words. It's better. So again, use clear, accessible language that resonates with the emotions of your organization's members. And again, when people understand the why behind ethical behavior, not just the rules, they're more likely to embrace it. And getting back to framing is such a huge thing in communications. When you practice a couple of framing statements, um, you know, matter of fact, I'm going to come up with some exercises, not for this episode, but I'm going to remember to come up with some exercises just so you can see how it shifts the message. You'll be surprised. But one example is Ben and Jerry's commitment to social justice. So Ben and Jerry, they use inclusive and value-driven language in their messaging, and it helped frame their stance on social justice issues as part of their core company values. Love Ben and Jerry's and love ice cream. So phrases like peace, love, and ice cream reinforce, Ben and Jerry's commitment to ethical practices in a relatable and memorable way. Like I said, peace, love, and ice cream. Who don't like that? And in a statement about racial justice, Ben and Jerry's wrote, "We must dismantle white supremacy. Silence is not an option." This strong language tied to the company's corporate identity to broader social values. That's huge, right? So, if you're a small business out there, think about what you're doing on a day to day, right? I know I'm there with you. I know it's hard. Sometimes it's like, I just want to, get above the fray, float, I just want to, not be pinching pennies or, scuffling by, but you still, it matters. It matters. Don't wait until later, say, oh, later on when I have all these contracts, then I'll start thinking about, how I'm going to tie, my ethics to, societal values. No, people are watching right now, and you want to start building that into the way you operate. You want to be mindful of it right now. So again, with Ben and Jerry, they tied their corporate identity to the broader societal issues or values, and again, that served to inspire trust and engagement among their stakeholders. So the language of ethics is most effective when it emphasizes shared values. So use inclusive and relatable terms to foster collective responsibility. Language of ethics, it has to be clear and direct. Again, avoid jargon. We said that several times over and over. Make sure it's clear, because clarity is the key to building trust, not those big buzzwords, but clarity. The language of ethics must be empathetic. You want to hit those emotional chords and the human aspects of those particular ethical issues. And then you want to promote positivity, frame challenges as opportunities. I love that. Love, love, love framing challenges as opportunities. I tell people all the time when problems come, they're like, oh, we just can't never get ahead. Every time we do something else, here's something else. I'm just like, I love it. And they look at me like, you so weird. No, because every opportunity is a challenge. I'm sorry, every challenge is an opportunity to excel. I said that backwards. But yeah, that's the way I view it. There's always an opportunity to excel with every challenge. So you want to use that forward-looking language, like people say, oh, I like to take a glass full, half full versus half empty approach. It is that thing. Oh, wow. So it is almost time for us to end, I'm just having such a good time. But I'm gonna tell you what. So I'm gonna end with this story because I like it so much. This is another example. So we talked about being in Jerry's, but this is one of my favorite. This is Nike's Colin Kaepernick campaign, right? So Colin Kaepernick, who was a former NFL quarterback, he was a polarizing figure after kneeling during the national anthem to protest brutality and racial injustice. The act sparked national debate with supporters praising his stance on social justice, and critics, including political leaders, accused him of disrespecting the flag and the military. So when Nike made Kaepernick the face of its Just Do It campaign's 30th anniversary, the decision, positioned the brand firmly on the side of social justice, which was a bold move given the controversy surrounding Colin Kaepernick. Nike's controversial campaign featuring Colin Kaepernick told a powerful story about standing up for one's beliefs. That's what I like the most about it, right? So this was Nike's storytelling approach. So the core narrative was the campaign's tagline was "Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything." It just gives me goosebumps. This encapsulated Kaepernick's story because he lost it. He lost his career was ended. This tagline highlighted Kaepernick's his courage to stand up for his beliefs despite his personal and professional sacrifices, such as losing his career. Visual storytelling. Nike's campaign featured powerful visuals, including a close-up of Kaepernick's face. There was a video ad that expanded the narrative, including diverse athletes who overcame challenges, such as a young girl. She was training to be the fastest runner in the world. There was a wrestler born without legs, and he was winning. That's now a movie, okay? And then LeBron James and Serena Williams, and other icons. It showed their story for a determination to broader societal goals. So, this blend of personal and universal stories tied Kaepernick's protest to a broader theme of perseverance and justice. It was just so, so powerful. And like I mentioned, it hit emotional appeal. It resonated with me, okay? Because it created an emotional connection, that transcended all the controversy. As a soldier, I'm like, why is she taking kneeling on the flag, but I get it, right? I had that emotional connection. And lastly, as far as inclusivity and diversity, the campaign emphasized inclusion because it represented people of all backgrounds, abilities, and ambitions, right? Who doesn't love that? Who can't get behind that? And it sent a clear message that Nike supports those who challenge norms and fight for equality, right? And ultimately, Nike won because they saw a 31% in online sales. That was one of the positives that they saw after this campaign. So I am running out of time, which is so, so sad because I have so much more to share. So I will make this into a class. I still owe y'all several other classes. It's coming. It's only so much time in the day, but I'm going to get to it. I promise, promise, promise. But, with that said, to recap, the 8 strategies for creating an ethical culture are consistent messaging, leading by example, open dialogue to encourage accountability, ethics training. You want to make sure you hit that. And we're going to have some here on Ontario Academy. I'll let you know when it's ready. Recognition of ethical behavior to reinforce values, make it known within your organizations, within your formations. You want to align policies and practices. You want to create a sense of shared purpose to unite employees. And then you want to be transparent in measuring and communicating progress. So as we conclude this episode, I want to leave you with a thought that encapsulates everything we've explored today. Ethics isn't just a destination, it's a journey. And that journey begins with trust, authenticity, and the courage to engage, even in the face of skepticism. Leaders who build relationships through consistent action, communicate genuinely, and foster open dialogue inspire belief and transformation. Ethical communication isn't about perfection, but progress. Walking like you talk it every day and inviting others to do the same. As we've seen, the rewards of ethical leadership go beyond trust or credibility. They create ripples that can shape our workplace, a community, and even a world that values integrity. So I like that word ripples because our next series talks about the ripple effects. So again, this is Dr. Vaughn, leading by example. I hate that we run out of time. But I'm just reminding you that ethical communication isn't just about what we say, it's about how we live, lead, and inspire. Okay, so make sure we're consistent in what we say and what we do. A special thank you to Mr. Stephen Anderson. I hope I said your name correctly, for keeping us on target and ensuring today's episode ran smoothly. So be sure to join us for our next episode, which will be broadcast on Thursday, January 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Transformation Network, where we'll discuss ethical dilemmas in modern leadership. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you in our next episode. Stay virtuous, stay curious, and take care. Goodbye. You have been listening to Leading by Example, upholding standards without compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, bringing you inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. As we go through and learn these lessons, I would ask you to be thinking about those lessons that you bring, that you could share for potential, hey, you may even want to be a guest on our show. So think about those lessons as we continue to explore inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. For more information, please visit www.ontarosolutions.com. That's ENTERO.